Welcome back to Tech Connect. I'm Jason Martin, and today we're joined by Chris Dayton and Hans Does, Shark Tank-backed entrepreneur and founder of Tentacle and Stuff Manufacturing. In this episode, we're digging into what it really takes to build physical products at scale, the hard lessons from global manufacturing, and why Hans made the move to domestic production. We'll also look ahead at how tech like AI, robotics, and rapid tooling are reshaping manufacturing. Let's get into it.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Hans. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you here today.
Yeah.
So you're about to give a presentation to the SoCal Tech Forum after our podcast here.
Yep.
We're joined by Jason Martin, who's on our board. And
hi, Jason.
yeah, and Hans, we've known each other a few years now. You've started with Tentacle when I met you. You're doing some very interesting things with stuff manufacturing, and I just want you to tell us a bit about it. Let's introduce you.
Yeah, Tentacle has been a really fun project that turned into a pretty good-sized little small business with just making fun products that enhance people's lives in a way. And I've since transitioned into manufacturing products here in the States, and it's been an exciting roller coaster of a journey, but here we are, yeah.
And tell us a bit more about when you started Tentacle. Like, what's the timeline there? And you're a Shark Tank-backed company, so I want to know, how did you get there?
Yeah, so it was about 2015 that I actually had the idea, and I started looking at, like, okay, how would I actually get a product to market? It was always just a side job. I was working at Hurley at the time as a graphic designer, so it was just a really fun sort of side project that I was working on, and I knew I needed to get a patent. Patent attorneys were too expensive. I learned that you could write your own patent and file it as pro se. So went through that whole process, eventually got the patent granted, and then and I met my wife that same year, and she's like, well, are you going to do this or not? And she kind of gave me that extra push to get it off the ground, and started 3D printing prototypes and mixing material in the garage and seeing if I can do it, and eventually launched on Kickstarter. And our goal was like 15,000 at the time, just to kind of get things rolling. Ended up doing like 170 between Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and that was the point where I'm like, oh, I can actually like really leave my job and just go full time into this. And
there's actually demand for it.
Yeah. I figured, make products that a lot of people would be able to use, ubiquitous products that solve, even if it's a small problem, but it is a small problem for a lot of people, that tends to, have a larger flywheel. And that's what I went for on that thing. Yeah.
And with graphic design was your background.
Yeah.
What got you into a consumer product? Are you like a tinkerer?
I was always creative, I guess. I was always super interested in product design. I wanted to go to Art Center in Pasadena and learn product design and do all that. Learned that there was just no way I was going to be able to afford to do that. Landed an internship at Hurley doing graphic design. And I think the moment for me that was the coolest was seeing something that came from my brain out in the wild, and like seeing a graphic that I had made that someone spent their hard-earned cash on and are rocking like a graphic that came from my brain, and now it's on their shirt. And to me, that was like a really cool moment. It felt less like, oh, I'm just making something for myself. I'm making something for other people. And, art is a cool way to express that, but art is more of a communication of ideas. It's not really like a functional thing. And so to me, design was always like art for function. And I'd say that early moment was definitely like that t-shirt moment. I was walking around, I saw someone wearing something that I made. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. So I'm a founder. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your origin story and kind of the path to your product. Jason's going to guide us through some of the scaling pressure and inflection moments. And as we go, right, you've operated Tentacle for some time. Stuff MFG is new. Feel free to like weigh in on both sides of that as we go when we talk about all these questions. Okay. But, as an entrepreneur, I have my origin story. I'm curious, like what early experiences do you think kind of shaped you as a builder and entrepreneur?
I would say, well, early was in high school. I was drawing hats on like trucker hats and trying to sell those, and that was like a fun thing to like, oh, I can make something that people will buy because it's cool. That was sort of like the early origin story maybe, but it wasn't until I guess when we got to my older years, or older high school years, where I was making things for other departments of the high school. To me, it's always been about creativity, and I just like making stuff.
Being an entrepreneur is pretty creative too.
Yeah,
you got to solve a lot of problems.
I would say the entrepreneur side almost came by default. It was like, I have this cool idea. How do I get it out to the world? And becoming an entrepreneur was the best, fastest way to do that. And I can control its outcome.
Yeah.
You know, if you just give it to someone else and take a royalty, yeah, that's really easy. And, you know, sometimes I'm like, man, that would have been a lot easier.
Totally.
But, yeah, to make sure that things actually see the light of day, sometimes it just really takes yourself to get it done. And I'd say entrepreneurship was sort of by default for me.
That's awesome. And for Tentacle, you had some rough first prototype. Like, no CPG company starts with direct manufacturing, right? Tell us about, like, what was your first prototype like? How did you string it together?
Oh, man. So the first prototype I actually made in my bedroom with clay, and it's called clay. RTV silicone. It's what they use for like movie makeup and stuff. So it's 2 parts of silicone. You mix it together and it vulcanizes or hardens. But it releases all these vapors that are actually pretty toxic. And so I didn't realize that. I woke up in the morning with a sore throat and I was like, oh gosh. And this thing was horrible. It was hideous. But it like had the same functionality sort of that kind of worked. And I would give it to friends and family, like, here, try this. This is what I was thinking it could be used for. It's like a car mount and a tripod in one. And then every person I gave it to had like a different way that they would use it. And that was sort of like the light bulb moment, like, oh, this is actually really cool. It's giving people an opportunity to be creative with the thing that's designed for one thing, but also does a million other things. So, but they were terrible. And my wife actually saved my butt one time. We were, so I was 3D printing the mold side, and then mixing the material as I was on like prototype 80. Like I just kept going. I could have stopped way sooner. And the mold went, I did something, I turned or something, and the mold went flying. And my wife she played volleyball in high school, and I just watched her dive across the garage and grab this thing from shattering on the ground. And I was like, I'm definitely going to marry that girl.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
So you're then pre-fiance, right?
Yep.
Like pre-marriage. Was your wife along for the whole Tentacle journey just after?
She was right there when I had just filed the patent and everything. So
Nice.
I had kind of already had the idea beforehand, and it was just like a fun side project while I had a great day job.
That's awesome.
But she's absolutely been there through all of the highs and lows and the entire
awesome,
thing.
Yeah, good for you. So you talk about patents. When did you know that what you were working with is IP you needed to protect? Was it just something you just knew because you're following, other entrepreneurs and you knew that was necessary? Or did you say, wow, when you saw all the utility from people, you were like, I got to protect this IP? And how did you get into patents and that whole crazy mess?
Yeah, I think it was my dad had a friend that his dad became wealthy from patenting some construction tools. Yeah. And I think I always kind of learned early on that, like, oh, if you have a really good idea and you patent it, you're no longer, if you can sell a product, you could sell millions of a product, but if you work a job, you can only send or sell so many hours of your time. And so like early on, it sort of was instilled in me to like make something that I can sell, and even better if it's just yours and you have protection over it. So I always kind of have that in my head.
Nice.
Yeah.
And every entrepreneur, when they start a business, especially the way you did, pretty organically, self-funded, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before any investment, there's always, and even now in your maturity, there's always a "this is harder than I thought" moment. What was your first "this is harder than I thought" moment?
I don't know if I can give you a first one. There's just every month there's a new "this is harder than I thought." That's just endless.
Never gets easier,
it never
right?
gets, yeah, it never changes. But you just sort of find a way to, take another step forward. I'd say one of the harder ones was a reality check on what it costs to acquire a customer. And even in the glory days of Facebook, you kind of do some back of the napkin math on what you think you'll actually be able to do numbers wise, and like, if I get this much market share and it costs
Average
this much
value of this.
it's just I was really naive back then, thinking that that's how it was going to go, but in a way I'm kind of glad I was naive, because it allowed me to just keep pushing forward. So,
and that's great. So now with Tentacle, you've got a product people want. You've scaled it. You've learned a lot. You've made your own molds. You've done manufacturing. You've done the business side, the finance side. That is my understanding of why you moved into Stuff MFG, is to help other organizations with challenges you had as a CPG brand, building these products, right? Manufacturing. You can probably share some learnings and experience.
Yep.
So just tell us how you transitioned to that and what's your motivation there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess boiling my motivation down to its core, I'd say that I just like making stuff. And if I I really like the product development side of things. And if I can be at the core of that, from ideation all the way to design for manufacturing, to me, I just get a lot of personal satisfaction there, and I know how hard it is to find that person or that group that would help you take an idea and actually bring it to market, and doing it in a way that the numbers math out and you can actually have enough margin to build a business off of. I think those are really key elements that, if you go to a lot of these, there's a lot of great design houses and manufacturers, and you can go to them and with an idea, and sometimes speed is an issue, because there's only a certain window for this market to really have its flash moment, or there's cost prohibitive things with even just your design, if you can sort of change the design to get it to work. So yeah, I'd say the motivation is I really like making stuff, and I've been through the process myself, and I think it's a really fun way to kind of help others do the same. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So now we talk about scaling. Yeah.
Yeah. So, earlier you mentioned that you had wild success on Kickstarter. There was a lot of demand. We've talked through, the prototyping. So what did the scaling process look like? And what were those inflection points where you knew that you really had to up level your production and continue scaling?
Yeah. Scaling, I've learned a few things in scaling, because I'd always thought plan ahead, figure out what your numbers are going to be per quarter. You never really know what those numbers are going to be. And in the landscape today of digital ads, once you hit a wave, you kind of just have to ride that wave as much as you can, because things can change so quickly, and get while the getting's hot is just really important. Which is another reason why I wanted to start this facility, is we could really reduce the lead time from order to delivery and production in between, because we don't have to ship from overseas. I mean, I've air freighted product in I'd say the biggest inflection point is realizing like, oh, I did not order enough inventory for this. Now I have to rush order a bunch of stuff and then bring it in on an airplane. Like imagine what it costs. The cost to ship a container on the ocean is one thing, but you put that on an airplane and all of a sudden, you know, it really gets to be an issue. And I think that's definitely been a challenge multiple times in this business is scaling too fast in that way. And then it's also like boots on the ground. You know, you need people to fulfill these orders. And we had always done all of our own fulfillment, or not always. We'd used 3PLs in the past, but we just found that it was more cost effective if we can have hourly wage workers doing so many an hour versus the pick pack cost. And that's why we've always just done it ourselves. But, yeah.
Interesting. So as you started to scale, I would imagine like a lot of the business processes you have set up, there's different areas that you find all of a sudden don't scale along with your volume, right? So what were those within your business, whether it's like processes or your manufacturing approach, or like what did you find was the most like fragile in your approach?
I'd say customer service is a tough one, because you know when you're doing tens of thousands of orders, there's a percentage of orders that are going to slip through, or there's a percentage of folks that are going to have, you know, some kind of an issue with their order, and being able to quickly scale that customer service was one thing. On the production side, having accountability from the factories to really be honest with how much they can produce and what time has always been another difficult thing.
They'll always tell you yes, right?
They'll always say yes, we'll take your money and we'll deliver it X date, and they miss those windows. Now also your customer service just got way worse because there's all these late orders, and usually that always happens around the holidays. And so people are missing their Christmas gifts. So that's always been a challenge. Is it's directly to the customer is where it comes down to, and it kind of starts on the accountability with your factory there.
So how did that like shift your relationships with your manufacturers? So you have a manufacturer that's missing deadlines. Did you have to rotate out new manufacturers often, or like how did that affect you?
Yeah, we've had a few manufacturers. It's really come down to screw it, I'll do it myself, and that's why I started this factory. Yeah, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And you were mentioning customer service as well. So was that something you also did yourself, or was that like ever outsourced? How did you handle that as you scaled?
Yeah. So we had a team lead, and she had 3 U.S. support folks, and then we had scaled up to about, I want to say there was about 10 overseas VAs that would help with managing all of it and actually doing the responses and everything that we would prepare. So I think at our peak, we had about 12 to 14 customer service reps helping with just the scale that we had there. Yeah.
Very interesting. And did that, because I know you started direct to consumer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you eventually transitioned to retail distribution and all that. Like, how did that change during your scaling and opening up retail distribution?
Yeah, so retail was always in the cards from the get-go. It's just really hard to get retail.
Yeah.
Because the gatekeepers are the buyers of those retail stores. So you really have to convince those buyers that not only is it going to sell, but it's going to make them look good. And, because it's their butts on the line. That's their job, is to make sure that they're buying products that are going to sell through all the way. And retail is a totally different animal. You know, you can't have a video ad explaining your product on the shelf. You really have to display it and have the copywriting and everything. Just so I'd say, to answer your question, the retail side was always sort of congruent with the e-com side, and the product was always set up for a retail push, and that's why our packaging had always been in retail packaging. And So the only thing that really changed is that there was less work in fulfilling individual orders, but more work in doing EDI setup, or all the connections that it takes to on the back end with these retail. If someone can come in and like fix EDI for businesses, that's a huge thing, because it's a lot of work to get just set up with a retailer. But yeah, I'd say that they're more individual project based versus the mass scale when you're going direct to consumer.
Interesting. Okay. So going back, let's shift back to the manufacturing process, because that's something that I always find is very interesting, and especially I know later on we're going to talk about nearshoring and bringing manufacturing back. But when you were manufacturing overseas, how did you select that global manufacturing model? And outside of delivery windows and inventory planning, like what other challenges presented themselves? Like, did you have quality issues? Tell me more a little bit about that.
Yeah. So initially we were actually producing, the very first products were made here in the States.
Okay.
But the numbers broke. We over-designed it, and so it cost a little too much just on too many fancy things into it. It didn't work that great. The quality was actually, at one point we had like a 15% defect rate, which is like really, really high. So it just didn't work. And it was also the materials that we were using. We were using a TPU. This product needed to be silicone, and no one in the US was doing silicone really for consumer goods. So I sort of was forced to look overseas. And that selection process was, I just wanted someone on the US that can be a rep for me and work directly with the factory that way, instead of, through WeChat or those other channels. When I finally did get, we've had 3 overseas factories. Outside of like inventory planning and fine tuning the molds and everything to make sure that quality is up to par, you really start to see your IP floating around. That becomes a thing. That's a huge risk. You also start to notice that the communication is really tough. One of them being deadlines, like I mentioned before. They take so many holidays and they'll be gone for like an entire month, and it's not like an email gets answered. Even the whole country shuts down for all of Chinese New Year. And then a few other things to think about is the biggest problem, I'd say, is the time thing. Number one, you have the production lead time, and then you also have the freight that it takes of product just sitting on water. And then you have changes in cost variably because of that freight. There could be a port strike by the time it gets here. Now your goods are stuck on the ocean for, who knows how much longer. And that's, inventory is life, when you're scaling.
Meanwhile, customers are expecting their Christmas gift to arrive.
Exactly.
And did that impact any of the relationships you had with on the retail side? Because like retail is very,
Oh, absolutely. The retailers, in a weird way, all the retail is set up to where they get discounts if it's late a certain. So
yeah.
The thing that hurts the most is just your bottom line. That's really the thing that hurts the most. We've never been too late for a retailer, so that was okay. But it's also because we've paid significantly more to air freight product in, and we've solved those problems in other ways that end up hurting your bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah, and then customer acquisition costs go out the window, right?
Yeah,
at that point, you just need to save the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Is one of your motivators for being in retail customer acquisition, meaning exposure to your product? Because retail margins just aren't as good as direct-to-consumer margin. So is part of your calculation, I get exposure to X number more, Lowe's customers or whoever it is, and then ideally maybe they repurchase from me directly? Like, is that part of the calculation?
Yeah, I think retail margin these days is actually better margin. Your net revenue or your gross revenue is lower because you're only selling it at a wholesale cost. But in reality, your bottom net nowadays, everyone is running ads on all the digital platforms. There's so much noise out there. Consumers are really smart. If you have distribution, a consumer will go into a Target knowing that Target's got good stuff. It's not like all the crap that you see flying across, Instagram that you don't know if it's actually that good or not.
Yep.
So I'd say omni-channel, meaning, direct to consumer and retail, is just part of the larger overall strategy. The more you're advertising online, the more times a consumer's in a store and sees that product that they already saw online. Okay, now they're familiar with it and they're seeing it there. And also Target likes this product enough to bring it into their store. It must be a good product. It's going to just help the overall strategy. So in some ways, yes, you're going to get new customers because they're seeing it for the first time. It is advertising. But it's also that like third, fourth touch point moment for a lot of these consumers that they're seeing it in the retail finally.
Yeah. So apparently, there's a lot of trade-offs from what I can tell from global manufacturing. I mean, there's the benefits of, cost reduction, all of that kind of stuff, but there's the trade-offs that you talked about with, inventory management, missed deadlines, there's risks in shipment, IP infringement that you may or may not be able to enforce. And that brought you to bringing some of the, manufacturing process back to, the United States. So maybe you can talk to us about that pivot point and why you chose to bring it back here. And let's hear more about your story.
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with global supply chain, the risk actually increases significantly because as we've seen over this last year, crazy tariffs, and that's just from us. Who knows what... China even did the export tariffs now on like magnets and other materials. There's the way to be the most secure and have the best moat around your supply chain is if you can make it in your backyard. That
control it all.
Yeah, control it all. That reduces the lead time. It reduces IP theft risk. It reduces all those other problems that we're talking about. But the greatest thing that it reduces risk on is getting product from halfway across the globe to your retailer and into your customer's hands. There's just so much that can go wrong, and anyone in operations and logistics knows that and has seen it happen. So that transition for me was more of a moat around my business, and then realizing the certain process that we're specifically focused on is silicone manufacturing for consumer products, and no one in the US is really doing it. And that's why I decided, hey, I'll be the one, I'll raise my hand up and try this out. Factories in the US are really focused on aerospace, defense, medical, super high margin industries. And so to do consumer goods and do it cost effectively here in the States is kind of important because we need our supply chain.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, that brings us to the heart of the episode. Chris, did you want to ask a little more about the reshoring pivot and, how that's going so far?
Yeah. When I was in India, I sent you a text, Hans, and you were like, "Oh, you're in India. I'm in China."
Yeah.
And I'd like to just tell our listeners a bit more about the purpose of the trip. And then I don't even actually know this. Leading up to that trip, when were you like, I'm going to hop on a plane and I'm going to go get myself some equipment and figure this out?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the when. I was just on the hunt trying to find the right equipment. In the U.S., to get the machine I got would be about $600,000 from a U.S. company. I was able to get the same machine for about $60,000 shipped
Wow.
from overseas. So it's a tenth of the cost. It's like, look, I'm just starting this out. I can't go, YOLOing on over $500,000 piece of equipment. So I'll go with the less expensive option. And my hypothesis was, well, if all of our products are coming from China and this is the stuff they're using, must be good enough. So
is that part of it? Was knowing what equipment they were actually using for things? Like I'm sure the big scale people maybe had some more advanced equipment, but this is an equivalent piece of manufacturing equipment.
You would be surprised what kind of equipment the larger places overseas are doing. And I think that's the misnomer that a lot of the U.S. has is we need the best equipment. No, you could get moving with, it's a hydraulic press. It's not that complicated. It just goes up and down, applies pressure and heat. So for me, that trip was learning the machine. I ended up buying the machine before going over there with my partner. And we went there to go, learn on the machine that we just had made and then go tour a bunch of facilities, see how they're doing everything, and then shop for new equipment while we're there as well as raw material suppliers, because we still want to make sure that we have a nice draw of raw material suppliers across the board. So, yeah, that's why I was there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Look, in this whole calculus, I think one of the things I know you're a proponent for is a lot of people believe that it's impossible because of labor costs to manufacture in the U.S. What's been your experience and what's your theory behind that? Yeah.
So I only know this because I did a bunch of research on it and ended up writing a little article about it. In 1995, China's manufacturing labor cost about 2.5% of U.S.'s manufacturing labor. So significantly cheaper.
Wow.
Today, it's about 31% of that same margin. So the actual cost of labor overseas isn't as good as, everyone thinks, oh, just go to China. Everything's cheap there. It's not. When you're there and you see these facilities, it's not sweatshops. It's not and these factories are making really good margin. There's a reason why China has exploded on a global, they are so futuristic over there. Those factories are making great margin. It's not like they're not. So on the labor side, I'll just do a quick math for you. So for us to have a 6-cavity mold, that means we have 6 products that can go every cycle. And our cycle time is about 60 seconds. We can put together that we can pump out 360 units in an hour. Let's just say our wage worker is making $36 an hour, which is phenomenal. That boils down to 10 cents a unit in labor costs. So the math is, on the labor side, isn't really the thing that is the expensive part here in the U.S.
Yeah. That's great. And I think what's fascinating about that statistic is these are known trade-offs. So like you said, manufacturing here in our backyard means control over supply chain, intellectual property, et cetera.
Yep.
There are, 30% of labor cost is still significant.
Yeah.
But then you have to trade off on all the other aspects, getting it to the U.S., freight, having to air freight things in when things go sideways and you want to maintain relationships. So just the net calculus there is all of that complexity in exchange for a 70% margin on labor. Yep. And as you've described, if you have the throughput of product, the labor equation, per unit drops pretty effectively.
Yep. And you can design your production to run around how many units can we produce an hour, and that's really what we're doing. So we're trying to maximize we bought a machine that maximizes the footprint so that we can have as many cavities of each item in there as possible, so we can maximize the per unit per cycle. And if you think about what you said, so China may be paying 30% of what a U.S. wage worker is paying. but the brands are paying 60% if you put in the tariffs. That's not all going to them. So
Good point.
you're paying not only the factory's margin, all the labor that they put into it, but then you're also doubling that when you're bringing it over here from overseas. So you're actually paying, significantly more on every single item on that list. Yeah.
So let's talk about technology in manufacturing.
Okay.
And I want to understand a bit about, right, because what you're describing with US-based labor, acquiring equipment, having a local facility, the way that you continue to improve your margin is by getting better in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Getting better in process, using maybe forms of AI, using advanced robotics at some point. And, think as well, like more broadly than just what you're up to, manufacturing in general and the tech involved there. What technologies are making manufacturing more feasible in the United States to drive that cost down and increase throughput?
Well, for me personally, I'm on Grok and ChatGPT all day, every day, practically. It helps me with so much, even on the on materials side, on what mold release do I get for the simple things to
maybe
more
materials
complex
research.
exactly. Yeah. Helping me out with a lot of this math of like, okay, what should the cycle time be generally? You don't know until you're actually processing. So I use it in a lot of that side and the technical side, like really technical stuff. It can help me sort of like get through a problem. On the robotic side, I mean, robots have been in manufacturing for a long time. I think that the accessibility to robots and cobots and the ease of use of those things are going to get vastly better. I bought a pair of Meta glasses just so I can purely film our processes while doing it, so that I can then, when the robots get here, train my robots on how to do certain jobs. And I think that, robots in manufacturing now are very much designed as like this one thing does a specific job. The robot doesn't look like a human, is what I'm saying. But very soon here, you can start to add humanoid robots with the advent of AI and training them in a more natural way, how we would be used to doing it, rather than getting in there and programming everything. There's still going to be a massive need for the programming end, but I really see in the next few years here, when those humanoid robots start getting released and in the public and in the wild, that's just going to 100x how easy it'll be to actually be running production. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
so.
look, I think we can go super deep here.
Yeah.
I think what we'd like to do is kind of land here with a few takeaways. So, Jason, you can help me kind of round this out. I'll start off by asking, what's one myth about domestic manufacturing that you kind of want to squash?
It doesn't require crap tons of money. It really doesn't. You don't need to go raise millions and millions of dollars to open a factory. I think that's probably the biggest myth. I also want to just add one other thing to it. Manufacturing has not been looked at as a sexy field at all. It's always been, dingy, dirty sweatshops. More smart people need to get into manufacturing because we need it. It's the lifeblood. It's one thing working with bits, but working with atoms is kind of the thing that makes everything around us. And I think that we just need a bit of a pivot. And there's some folks leading that. There's the reindustrialized movement kind of starting up, more younger folks getting into it. But, we need to change the average age of factory owners is 72 years old. Wow. In the U.S. That's, that really needs to change fast. And, I'd say it's not that complicated. Like, guys, I was a graphic designer. I'm not like, I didn't even go to college, and you can figure it out. I think more smart people just need to get into this field, definitely. Yeah.
So then, for our listeners out there, they have someone has a great idea. What advice would you give to them? What should they do first? How would they get started?
Number one, you're going to need some kind of a prototype, physical thing, a CAD file, anything to put that what's in your brain into a working item. It could be a really complicated thing that could take a while to get there, or it could be something pretty simple that you could just 3D print or have someone 3D print for you. I'd say first step is see what the market already has that's similar to it. Go to google.com/patents and search every single way to describe your product, see if there's a patent on it. If there is, how can yours be a bit different? And then figure out making some prototypes. Hit us up, we can help you. And Fiverr is a great way to get 3D modeling done, or Upwork, or any of those platforms. There's a lot of great talent out there, and people can help. Yeah.
And if you were to start a physical product company today, maybe it's Tentacle related, maybe it's not, what's next?
If I were to.
If you were.
I am.
You are.
Well, kind of. It is through the factory. So the reason I wanted to start stuff manufacturing, we make stuff, is I want to get into our own private brands under the Stuff Factory label. So we can do kitchen stuff and kids stuff and all kinds of stuff. So a lot of those ideas that have been rattling around my brain will finally be put to good use, and yeah, do that.
And along this whole journey, what has been the most expensive manufacturing mistake that you've made?
Not understanding the actual measurements of our machine and providing just the basic data to our mold engineers to go and tool molds, and then realizing that, that mold doesn't fix, so we have to make a jig for it, or yeah. And it costs time. I'd say time is the biggest cost. When machines aren't running and making money, it's costing you. So yeah.
And there's a lot of things you can automate in manufacturing. How do you tackle the decision, and maybe you can give us some examples of what is worth automating and what is worth keeping manual?
So in a weird way, I'm trying to not automate too much at the moment. I'm trying to get all the manual stuff work. I mean, we're still very new, so I'm trying to just really understand back and forth everything that's manual. And then when we get to automating, there's certain processes that if it automates for multiple things, then that's a good thing to automate. If it's just automating one specific job, unless you're running millions of units of that one specific job, it's probably not worth automating. But automating certain processes that can have versatility to different products, I think, is important.
You've talked about some pretty impressive throughput numbers with, 6 units per press, right? At what point in 60 seconds, right? At what point, you have to have demand to sell those products.
Yep.
So you can make them 6 per 60 seconds,
Yep.
but you need to match demand. So, where are you at in that journey? Is there enough volume for you to produce at that pace and ship the units, or is this a calculation you make across your products? Maybe you're doing a couple hours of each product, and you have a essentially a grouping of products that you're manufacturing to sell, and you have throughput for the whole set, or what's your approach?
Yeah. So the approach is to keep costs down for our customers, meaning the brands that we're producing for. It really helps to have the highest throughput per hour as possible. That means my next job becomes scheduling that machine to be running as much as possible. So acquiring customers has moved away from just D2C, even though there is some of that, to B2B, where we're actually working with brands that need certain products made. So yeah, it sort of changes where the issue is. The issue starts going into, let's just schedule this machine out as much as possible, and not going out and YOLOing on 10, 12 machines, but just getting what's needed to get a certain number of jobs done allows us to be small and nimble and not have a ton of overhead, which is super important.
Yeah, and you can pivot easier, right?
Exactly.
Where needed.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Hans, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate having you on the Tech Connect podcast, and we look forward to your presentation. And you showed up super early on a Saturday morning, so we know you love what you do. And you were probably building machines till 1 a.m. last night.
It was 1 a.m. last night, and I'll go straight there after this and get this thing going. Yep. Thanks, guys, so much. Really, really enjoy hanging with you guys.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Tentacle